Hey folks, it's good to be back with all of you today. And last week I gave you my opinions about Viviscal for hair loss. And if you watched that video, and if you haven't watched that video, I do recommend you watch it. But if you did watch the video, then you know that I absolutely shellacked it. I had nothing at all positive to say about it. And even though the product is still on the market today, Viviscal, it isn't very popular. And outside of a few late night infomercials, I don't hear much about it, so it seems pretty irrelevant. But it doesn't matter because there are still a lot of natural remedies that come and go, especially since regulation of what constitutes a dietary supplement is so lax in many parts of the world, including the USA. So what I want to do is examine the latest flavor of the month in the world of natural dietary supplements marketed for treating hair loss. And this product, which I'm talking about, is called Nutrafol. So if you go to the website for Nutrafol, it has a very nice professional look, which leaves a positive first impression. However, the first thing I noticed on the website was the headline, "You don't have to choose between what's natural and what works." And instantly my bullshit meter went off because this is a clear appeal to nature fallacy. And I hate it when people make appeal to nature fallacies because nature is our enemy. I mean, think about it. Nature is what is trying to make you go bald in the first place. So if you want to fight hair loss as is caused by androgenic alopecia, then the last thing you want to do is choose nature. I mean, just look at it. Look at nature throughout human history. I mean, many of the accomplishments that we've achieved as a society, especially in the fields of medicine, science, and engineering, have been through fighting back against the boundaries nature has shackled us to. Diseases born in nature like polio, smallpox, as well as various bacterial infections have all been conquered through our refusal to acquiesce to nature's tyranny. So the same thing can be said about many of the inherent flaws in human beings nature inflicts upon us for no good reason, like birth defects, congenital heart issues, cancer, and yes, even hair loss. So hair loss is obviously not a sign of poor physical health, and I'm not comparing like the severity of hair loss to cancer or heart disease or anything like that, but it is still nevertheless an example of a travesty inflicted upon us by nature, and one that we should not accept and something we should fight back against tooth and nail. So instantly, based on this claim, I knew that this product was suspect, but being that my only agenda is just to fight hair loss, I am still willing to at least give this product a fair look and examine whether or not any of its claims are backed by empirical evidence. So let's look at the claims made by this product and then see if there's any solid research to back up its claims. So first, what is Nutrafol? The manufacturer of Nutrafol describes it as a 100% drug-free nutraceutical, which is a portmanteau of nutrition and pharmaceutical. And even though nutrition and pharmaceuticals are not the same thing, the word nutraceutical may give people the impression that it is somehow related to pharmaceuticals. So they claim that the product is clinically proven to improve hair growth. However, as I discussed in many of my other product review videos, I have explained how research can be manipulated to take advantage of your average layman's scientific literacy to create misleading data. People will often make the case that you can find a scientific study to back just about any claim, which is true, but that's why it's even more important to be able to interpret good research from bad research. So what I want to do is let's take a look at this product in depth by examining the ingredients and then looking at their clinical research and seeing if it holds up to any kind of scrutiny. So the most notable ingredient, I'm hesitant to even call this an ingredient, but it's a trademarked proprietary blend they call the Synergen complex, which sounds pretty cool, but it doesn't really mean shit if all the ingredients are bunk. So fortunately, and I'll give credit to the manufacturers for at least having the transparency to include all the ingredients on the website. So let's look over all of them and take a scalpel to them so we can find out whether or not this product actually works for hair loss. So there are 3 different types of Nutrafol. There's the men and women's blends, which are virtually identical. And there's also another one called Women's Balance, which is also marketed as a hair loss treatment, but also includes additional ingredients like maca powder and astaxanthin to help with hormonal changes women experience during menopause. Now, obviously, I don't know very much about menopause, and that is not going to be the subject of this video, but I feel if women are experiencing hormonal-related stress or fatigue as a result of menopause, then they'd probably be better off going to a doctor and getting professional opinion rather than just trying to treat themselves with this product. So anyways, getting back on subject, let's look at both the men's and women's blends of Nutrafol since they both they're both marketed towards hair loss. And as far as I can see, they're pretty much exactly the same. So specifically, let's look at their patented Synergen complex and see if it lives up to its fancy sounding name. So the first ingredient in this complex, and this is one I was totally expecting, is saw palmetto. Saw palmetto, for those who don't know what it is, it's basically just a weed that grows wild in parts of the world. I think it's in Florida, and it's it's commonly used as a natural 5A reductase inhibitor. It's kind of like a natural finasteride. You can think of it that way. And there are a couple of problems with this product, though. And that's, first of all, in the studies done on saw palmetto as it relates to androgenic alopecia, the results have been shown to be no better than placebo. And specifically in a double-blind trial, and I'll link all this below, of course, there was a study conducted by Dr. Stephen Bent from the New England Journal of Medicine, and there were 225 men over the age of 49 who were given 160 milligrams of saw palmetto twice daily over the course of 1 year, and the treatment of benign prostatic hyperplasia, which is an enlarged prostate, BPH. And the study concluded that the group taking saw palmetto showed no improvement compared to the placebo group. And you may be thinking, okay, well, that is for enlarged prostate. I don't care about that. What does that have to do with hair loss? So let me get to that. The point is that there are 3 different types of 5A reductase inhibitor. Type 1 is active mostly on the skin, so it doesn't have anything to do with hair loss, but type 2 is what's active on both the prostate and the scalp. So any 5A inhibitor that would work on the prostate would also work on the scalp, since it's the same type of 5A enzyme that converts testosterone into DHT. And that's why a lot of the drugs that are FDA approved for hair loss are also FDA approved for benign prostatic hyperplasia, like finasteride. And you also have dutasteride, which is FDA approved for BPH, but it's also sometimes used off-label for hair loss. And also, the manufacturer Nutrafol claims that their product is side effect free, which wouldn't be possible if it actually worked, since anything that has any effect on human physiology is always going to carry a risk of side effects. So if saw palmetto were actually an effective 5A reductase inhibitor, which isn't backed by any strong research, then it would have the same potential side effects as finasteride. So natural doesn't mean side effect free. Natural doesn't mean safe. Natural doesn't mean a goddamn thing whatsoever. Moving on. The next core ingredient mentioned, and I had to write this one down because it's a little bit hard to pronounce, is ashwagandha. And their version is a patent kind they call sensorial ashwagandha, but from what I have seen, it is pretty much the exact same thing. So what is ashwagandha? Ashwagandha is an herb which is used in traditional medicine. And what is traditional medicine? Traditional medicine is a type of remedies human beings relied on before we had the tools needed to test and manufacture real medicine. And thus, the claims behind it are based more on anecdotes rather than any kind of scientific evidence. So examining the theory behind ashwagandha, it's that it helps fight hair loss by regulating cortisol levels. And indeed, there is actually a double-blind placebo-controlled study which examined 60 adults who were randomly assigned to take either a placebo or a 240 milligram dose of ashwagandha serum, and the results found that the group supplementing with ashwagandha had reduced morning cortisol levels. So for those who don't know, cortisol has many functions related to energy metabolism in the human organism, but is mostly known as a stress hormone. So the theory behind ashwagandha is that stress causes hair loss, and so by lowering cortisol levels, we can reduce stress and thus fight hair loss. I mean, that seems simple enough, right? Now, there is such a thing as stress-induced hair loss. It's called telogen effluvium. The problem is that it is so very rare that the majority of people who buy Nutrafol in hopes of treating their hair loss will get absolutely no benefit from the ashwagandha root in this product, even assuming that it does work. And additionally, the kind of stress people have to experience in order to actually get telogen effluvium has to be very traumatic. So it's not the type of stress you'd experience from, like, your boss being an asshole at work or your kids being annoying. It's usually seen in individuals with, like, extreme eating disorders like bulimia or anorexia nervosa. It's also sometimes a side effect of crash dieting, and it can be seen in people who have experienced severe mental or physical trauma, such as women who get miscarriages or in soldiers with PTSD. And the problem is that ashwagandha, even though it has been shown to lower cortisol levels, has never been proven effective in the treatment of telogen effluvium. And it's not even known whether or not elevated cortisol levels is the exact reason why people who have telogen effluvium lose hair. I mean, correlation doesn't equal causation after all. All we know is that severe emotional or physical trauma can somehow disrupt the hair growth cycle, which can lead to hair loss. Now, unlike androgenic alopecia, telogen effluvium is reversible once the source of trauma is under control. So it seems to me that dealing with the source of the mental or physical trauma, whether it be through a mental health professional or a doctor, would be more effective than taking some new ager. But even if you are sold on the hair loss and health claims of ashwagandha, you can easily just save some money and buy ashwagandha rather than Nutrafol. That's just much cheaper and more efficient that way. So Let's cover the next ingredient in this blend, and it's called curcumin. So curcumin is an ingredient which is found in turmeric, interestingly enough, and it's been shown to actually have anti-inflammatory and antibacterial properties. And curcumin has been studied in the treatment of scalp psoriasis, and indeed, in the study of 40 patients with mild to severe scalp psoriasis, curcumin was found to be an effective treatment for scalp psoriasis after just 9 weeks of treatment. So that sounds very, very promising. Sadly, this doesn't mean shit in the case for Nutrafol, because the studies done involving curcumin were done using topical curcumin applied and massaged directly into the problem area. Nutrafol, on the other hand, is an oral tablet which only has trace amounts of curcumin, and there has never been any evidence that oral curcumin has the same anti-inflammatory benefits to the scalp that topical curcumin does. Additionally, not all scalp inflammation is caused by bacteria, so an antibacterial treatment like curcumin may not help, because a lot of these scalp inflammations are actually caused by fungus, and in which case an antifungal treatment like ketoconazole, which comes in either a cream or a shampoo form like Nizoral, may be more up your alley. And also, I think I have to reiterate a point I made with the last ingredient, and that is that even though scalp inflammation, aka folliculitis, can be a cause of hair loss, it is a rare cause, and Nutrafol is a product that is marketed towards everyone suffering from hair loss, which again means that even if somehow the trace amount of curcumin in this product were to work, the overwhelming majority of people who buy this product would get no benefit whatsoever, since most causes of hair loss are hormonal related, not inflammation related. So if you do suspect you're one of the very few people whose cause of hair loss is not hormonal but caused due to inflammation, I'd recommend going to see a doctor and getting a scalp biopsy so the doctor can see what is causing the inflammation on the scalp so he can prescribe a legitimate treatment for you. So, covering the next ingredient in their patented Synergen blend, I realized that Nutrafol, I basically already reviewed it because it's the same damn thing as Viviscal, as it has the same marine collagen thing, which I talked about last week. And this is just the connective tissue of dead sea creatures like mollusks and sharks, and it doesn't do anything. And like I covered in my Viviscal review, to give you an overview of why these marine complexes seen in some of these over-the-counter hair loss remedies are bullshit, what the manufacturers do is that they take studies of people, mostly women, whose causes of hair loss are less likely to be hormonal, and they give them the product. Now, after several months to a year, the women may experience hair growth, and then the study will claim it was the magical mix of dead sea creatures that caused it. But the reality is that the hair loss these women experience is likely due to a biotin deficiency, which I learned is actually surprisingly common in women who are taking hair loss, and who are suffering from hair loss, I should say. And by taking these products, which are essentially multivitamins mixed with their proprietary blend of dead sea creatures, they were able to treat their nutritional deficiency. So what the manufacturers will never tell you is that it was actually just the vitamins that helped these women and not the marine complex, because if they were honest about it and told them that was just the vitamins, then people would save their money and they would just buy a multivitamin rather than buying this nutritional supplement. And they include these fancy proprietary blends so they can mark up the price and sell it to impressionable people. And Nutrafol, like Viviscal, is really no different, and the studies on its efficacy is just as misleading in the way Viviscal is, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So in the meantime, let's look up the next ingredient, which is called trocotrinol. Okay, so Trocotrinol, I know why they did this. What it is, it's just vitamin E. Vitamin E is made up into 8 different compounds, of which trocotrinol represents about 4. But if you're getting vitamin E, then you're getting all the trocotrinol you need in your diet. So what is vitamin E? Vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin commonly found in plant foods like almonds, broccoli, corn, avocados, amongst many sources. It's also found in a few animal products foods, but I'm not going to list them because I'm a vegan. Its source, its role in the human organism is that it helps with smooth muscle growth. And for those who don't know what the smooth muscles are, they're distinct from skeletal muscles, as in that we don't have direct nervous system control over them. So they'd include muscles that control functions like digestion, for instance. Vitamin E also is a powerful antioxidant, so it is absolutely an essential vitamin, meaning we have to get it in our diet. But deficiencies in vitamin E are not especially common. Now, there really is no strong evidence connecting vitamin E deficiency with hair loss. However, there is one study. It's a very weak study. It shows that amongst 38 people divided into a group of placebo versus vitamin E groups, the vitamin E group experienced slightly better hair growth, but this is way too small of a study to draw any conclusions from, being that the supplementation group only had like 21 people. And in addition to that, the small participation size, there aren't really enough controls put in place, including controls to see what their baseline vitamin E levels were to begin with. So I think that'd be pretty important in a study like this. So I don't think it's a very good study. And also vitamin E, it's a fat-soluble vitamin, and like all fat-soluble vitamins, they can be toxic when intake is too high, which can lead to health problems like nausea, muscle weakness, and fatigue, which makes supplementation of people who already have healthy vitamin E levels like a pretty questionable idea. So in my opinion, this is just yet another worthless ingredient, and even if you do want to believe that vitamin E somehow plays a role in hair loss, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. Take a multivitamin. You'll at least be saving yourself some money, and I think it's funny that with Nutrafol, instead of just saying vitamin E, they have to call it something fancy like trocotrinol complex, because they don't want people to know that it's just vitamin E. Otherwise, they may do something smart and just get their vitamin E from food or take a cheaper multivitamin. So yeah, another worthless ingredient. Let's move on. The next one surprised me because this is an ingredient I actually use, albeit not for hair loss, but for skincare as part of my morning routine, and it's called hyaluronic acid. Now, hyaluronic acid, I'll say from personal experience and based on the research I've done, is a very good skin moisturizer. I like it because I like to use a lot of tretinoin for my skin, which is a synthesized form of vitamin A, and it's been clinically proven to improve collagen production of the skin. But the problem with it is that it's also very drying. So I found that hyaluronic acid is a very effective way to counter that dryness, just because it's a very good moisturizer. So I think hyaluronic acid is definitely good for the skin, and I think the research backs it up. But as for it being an effective hair loss treatment, that's another story. So even though like I said, there is a lot of data on hyaluronic acid as it pertains to skin as well as connective tissue health, but there is no strong evidence whatsoever suggesting that it's an effective hair loss treatment. And there's at least one case study that suggests the opposite, which is pretty interesting. So in the case study, which I'll link below, it involves a 58-year-old woman who was receiving fillers in her temples, and she was injected with 6 milliliters of hyaluronic acid. Now, after 3 days, she experienced intense burning and developed a bald patch in the treated area where she lost 90% of her hair. So this is just an individual case. It's not proof of anything, but it doesn't really bode well for any proponent of hyaluronic acid being an effective hair loss treatment. So I don't know why Nutrafol included this ingredient. I guess it's because most of the research on it is positive, and also they make health claims outside of just hair loss. But once again, if you believe in hyaluronic acid, then just take hyaluronic acid, not Nutrafol. There's a lot of skincare products that contain hyaluronic acid. It's pretty common, and there's so much crap in a Nutrafol tablet already as it is that the amount of hyaluronic acid you're getting is probably going to be negligible anyways. So again, completely worthless. So that pretty much covers the entire Synergen patent, but outside of that, there's also a large list of supporting ingredients, including vitamins, minerals, and various herbs. And as I established in my review of Viviscal, deficiencies in certain vitamins like biotin can in fact cause hair loss. These deficiencies aren't especially common, but taking these vitamins will only help if you are in fact deficient in these vitamins. So if you're like taking biotin when you already get enough biotin in your diet, it's not going to help. And paradoxically, one of these vitamins in Nutrafol is vitamin A, which actually can cause hair loss when taken in high doses. And people who supplement vitamin A, who supplement vitamin A, as well as people who eat a lot of foods that are high in vitamin A, like cod liver oil, have reported hair loss as a side effect. So it's much safer to get your vitamin A from beta carotene, which is found in plant sources like sweet potatoes and carrots, which your body will only convert into the amount of vitamin A you need. So you can't get vitamin A hypervitaminosis from it. So none of the ingredients help with hair loss, but there are some ingredients which have other health benefits, like they mentioned milk thistle and artichoke, which are well known to be extremely good for liver health. They also have keratin, which is completely worthless, because even though that is what our hair is made out of, eating it will just cause it to be broken down into the gut into amino acids, just like any other food. And I've never heard of anyone growing hair by eating hair. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And also has nettle in it, which is pretty much the same thing as saw palmetto. It's a weed like saw palmetto, and it's kind of thought to be a natural 5A reductase inhibitor. But like saw palmetto, there is no evidence backing it up for hair loss. So Everything else in the tablet is basically just a collection of everything the manufacturer can find that even has a scant amount of research on hair loss, no matter how poor that research is, and they crammed it all into one tablet. So even if you believe some of these ingredients work, you'd be much better off just getting these from other sources like foods or just individual supplements. So even though Nutrafol's ingredients, when examined individually, don't seem to do a damn thing, they still have a science section on their website, and the first thing they do is to add the veneer of legitimacy, is that their product offers or their company, for their product, they offer one-on-one consultations with naturopathic doctors. And the problem here is that naturopathic doctors are not real medical doctors, and their profession isn't even a legitimate healthcare practice to begin with. None of these naturopathic doctors have any real medical training. They've never went to medical school. They never specialized in any field of medicine. All they do is promote unproven natural remedies promoted by the supplement industry, which is not based on medicine, but pseudoscience, anecdotes, and alternative medicine quackery. So getting medical advice from a naturopathic doctor would be like getting sex advice from Jason Blaha. They also offer referrals to actual medical doctors, but sadly, the supplement industry has corrupted legitimate medical professionals, so it's likely these doctors are in the pocket of this company. So if you're losing your hair, it'd be much better to independently seek out a medical doctor like a dermatologist who will prescribe you an FDA-proven medication like finasteride, which, unlike Nutrafol, will actually work. The science section also includes a clinical study which they proudly promote as backing up the efficacy of their product. So looking at the study, it had the same stench that I saw from the Viviscal study, and I immediately knew that what they were doing with this study. So the participants in the study, like in the Viviscal study, were women, and you may wonder, why would a study on hair loss, which is a condition which affects mostly men, include mostly women, especially since this product, Nutrafol, is marketed towards men and women. Now, it may not seem to matter because you may think hair loss is hair loss, and even though women can indeed suffer from hair loss for the same reason as men, androgen-related hair loss in women is much less common for the obvious reason that their androgen levels are much lower than those in men. So therefore, when women do lose hair, it is much more likely to be due to non-androgenic causes, including nutritional deficiencies. So I'll go ahead and just give an overview of the study. I also linked in my Viviscal review on biotin, since the Nutrafol company is basically doing the same thing that Viviscal did with their study. So biotin deficiencies are not terribly common, but then again, hair loss in women is not terribly common either. So biotin is an essential vitamin, but it is produced by the gut. So some gastrointestinal disorders can mean some people need more biotin than others. And also excessive consumption of egg white can cause a biotin deficiency due to the presence of avidin, which binds to biotin and prevents it from being absorbed. And this is probably more common now than we think, since egg whites are erroneously thought of as a superfood, especially amongst yoga moms who shop at Whole Foods and get their nutritional information from social media. So anyways, there was a study on women with hair loss which included 541 patients between the ages of 9 to 92 years old, and it was found that 38% of women were experiencing biotin deficiency. So that's over a third of women. So even though biotin deficiencies are not terribly common, we can safely say that biotin deficiencies are still a common cause of hair loss in women, but not men. So the reason why these studies include women is because the manufacturers know that the presence of vitamin will affect of the vitamin biotin will effectively treat these women's deficiencies. However, they don't want to reveal that it's just the biotin that caused it. Otherwise, consumers will just say, okay, I'm going to save my money and just buy cheap biotin supplements. So what they'll do is that they'll include this fancy proprietary blend with a bunch of worthless but fancy sounding ingredients. Then people will be convinced it must be this unique blend to this product which is making it work, so therefore they'll need this product if they want to get the same benefits as the women in these studies. So it's extremely duplicitous, it's immoral marketing that many people sadly fall for. And the only reason why products like this exist is because companies exploit our fears over safe, clinically proven treatments like finasteride and offer these supposed natural alternatives which don't work, but many people fall for because they're convinced that drugs like finasteride, which have a great safety profile and work extremely well, will cause irreversible damage. And the truth is that these horror stories that people read about finasteride are not unique to finasteride, and you can find people claiming even basic over-the-counter drugs like ibuprofen and Alka-Seltzer ruin their lives. So there is no way to confirm the veracity of these claims because they are based on anecdotes, not science. So please, if you are worried about hair loss, do what's right. talk to your doctor and ask for a prescription for finasteride. Don't give in to scams like Nutrafol, Viviscal, or any of the other hundreds of crap natural treatments that don't work. Because every time you buy a product like Nutrafol, what you're doing is that you're empowering people who spread fear and ignorance. So the truth is, there really is only one natural treatment for hair loss, and that is surrendering to nature and letting yourself go bald. Many people give up on things in life that are important to them. You know, people will give up on trying to lose weight. People will give up on working out. People who try to quit smoking will often give up. And if you're a person who doesn't like to fight for things important to you, then maybe fighting hair loss is not a battle for you. You know, you'd be better off joining some slaphead bald acceptance community where on the outside they give the impression of happiness and liberation, but deep down you can really tell that they're feeling regret and misery. So these guys who act like they're happy, they gave it up and shaved their head, are just coping with the fact that they waited too long to save their own hair. So they just try to convince as many people to follow in their footsteps as possible so they can feel more secure knowing other people share in their despair, which is a pretty selfish thing to do, I should add. So I say to you, that if your hair and your identity is important to you, then, you know, ignore all the slapheads who tell you, just shave it, bro. And, you know, ignore all the snake oil salesmen who manufacture crap like Nutrafol by not buying it. Or, you know, if you have bought it, then just flush it down the toilet and get some finasteride as soon as possible. So, you know, all right, I'm out. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.